What happens when two seasoned business leaders get together? They talk shop, of course. Sit back and listen in as Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso share from their experience around current issues facing executives, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey everybody, Vince Moiso here with the CEO Podcast, and we are finishing up. I mean, we're getting close to finishing up season 5 here, which is crazy to even think about. Very thankful, very grateful, especially, this holidays I think of as we move into the year 2024, which is crazy to think about. I'm very grateful for the longevity of this podcast. I'm thankful to get the opportunity to share our experience and share what we've learned, lessons learned, and certainly best practices and the things that have become successful for us.
So what I like about it is that we've done what we said we're going to do.
Yeah.
We're going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And even when we started bringing in guests, we didn't turn it into, there's a few questions that we have to ask people to get the thing rolling, but we didn't turn it into an interview. And we are promoting people's books and doing things that you do on podcasts, but it was still a conversation. And the three of us got to do that and sharing ideas. And I think the sharing of ideas is where the growth comes from.
Yeah.
So
I agree. And we don't always know where the conversation is going to go, right? And
that's the point.
And we don't know how that discussion is always going to be. We know the topic, and certainly we talk about content, but absolutely nothing is scripted in any way. And so that allows for us to have a very organic and real discussion, real time discussion on the various topics.
Yeah, it was interesting because I watch other people's podcasts and they just flow, boom, 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 and sometimes we have a pause because. Oh, that struck me different.
Yeah.
And I have to think about it, kind of like you would in a real conversation with friends. So it's been cool. So
yeah, I totally agree. And just recognize you, Scott, for being the driver of this podcast. It was your original brainchild, of course. And you've done a great job to just really push and drive this podcast. So I'm thankful that we've gone through 5 seasons and a lot of conversations with a lot of amazing guests. And so as I reflect, I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity. Today, we are going to talk about something really important, and we were recently reminded of that as we were having a conversation with a guest. And I think, what we heard from him was just this relentless focus on his purpose and the brand purpose for his company. And he repeated it several times, and he knew it, he understood it, he clearly lived and breathed it. And it was a great reminder for us as you think about, especially as you get to year-end planning, you're doing some strategic planning for the next year, it's always good to revisit your brand purpose, your vision, your blue sky vision, whatever you want to call it, and also your values. And so some of the questions that came up was, can you even recite your brand purpose? Do you know what it is word for word? Do you know what your values are? And can you recite those word for word? How many people in your organization can tell anyone what the brand purpose is, what the vision is, and what the values are? And it's a great question to ask, and you should be asking yourself that because you should be revisiting that on an annual basis.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. In fact, there's things about what we call culture, right? And I think that starts with vision, our values, mission and vision, certainly.
Yeah.
And then it's more how we do things around here.
Yeah.
And as long as those things are aligned and you have people that are aligned with those, life's going to go a lot smoother. The business is going to go a lot smoother. The happiness within the employees is going to go a lot smoother.
No doubt.
So, let's go back to values. Let's just talk about those as well. I just saw a LinkedIn post the other day, and it had this pyramid, and it talked at the top of the pyramid was skills, right?
Yeah.
And then it went down to trust and values and other things along those lines.
Yeah.
And I had to be the dissenter and come back and say, listen, unless it's a very highly technical, unless I'm hiring a brain surgeon, computer programmer, I can train the skills.
Yeah.
What I can't train are their values.
Mm-hmm.
They either have to have them in alignment with what the company likes, or they don't. And those come from childhood. Those come from their parents' upbringing. So my point was that unless it's a highly specific task that I'm hiring for, skills comes almost last. The values and the alignment of those with the company is most important to me.
Well, I've seen that pyramid inverted, right? So that larger section has values at the top.
Yeah.
And the reason you invert that pyramid is because you want to show what's most important at the top, right? I'm
not surprised at how many people said, skills are being undervalued and underrated and under this and under that. And again, we can teach that. The problem, and some of the people that are making the comments were saying, yeah, but do you know what it costs to teach that? My response is, do you know what it costs to not be in alignment with your values? And
you lose that person. Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Now we have to replace them.
Yeah.
Or they do such a horrible job because they don't align with you that you are going to replace them rather than them leave because it doesn't fit.
Well, and how costly is that, right? The hiring and firing and replacing process is incredibly expensive. So I think that gets missed. I think it's short-sighted to take skills over the esoteric stuff that you're referring to. I couldn't agree more. I would even argue that I bet that computer programmer or that IT position or, that very skilled position, finance position, I would argue that you can find somebody that aligns pretty dang closely with your values.
I think so, if you look for it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, what do they say? Hire slow, fire fast, right?
Right.
So, take the time to make sure.
In today's environment, right?
It's tougher.
Under 4%.
It is, yeah.
And people taking jobs and snapping them up and doing all that. It is tougher. I get it. However, it's still important to ensure that your hiring process is your process and you get people in alignment with what your organization believes in.
Yeah, I agree.
First part of that, though, is getting your organization to believe in something and where that comes from and how you go about doing that.
So that goes back to that the question I asked as we were starting off this discussion is, how many people in your organization currently can recite all of the values of the business? And when's the last time that you checked in? Because I find, you and I find in the coaching work that we do is that, some of these companies either haven't done the development of their brand purpose or vision, or maybe haven't checked in on their values for a decade, right? Mm-hmm. And so are those in fact representative of your true values? And by the way, this is important when we talk about values. The values of your business should be aligned with your own personal values. So like you can't have two separate sets of values, one for the business and one that you live personally. It's like you're either...
Exact words don't have to be the same.
No.
Right? And not everyone has to believe that integrity means what, trust and integrity are two different things. I mean, people can have different values,
right?
Different words for the values. But the alignment means that the theme of that value is shared.
Well, yeah, and so what's critical is that you take the time to update those. You take the time to really dive in. Make sure that your company values are totally aligned with your own personal values. That makes it actually very simple. When they're totally aligned with your own personal values, it's very easy to cite those values, right? Yeah. So, I've got, with the glass business, they're easy, right? It's pursuit of excellence, right? We use this one called Get Real, but essentially what I'm talking about is transparency and authenticity. And Fuego, which is really just around passion for what you do and why you do it, understanding your why and understanding the company's why, right? So we live those values. They're aligned with my own personal values. It's easy for us to constantly check in on that with our management team and our whole team. It's on our Lead with Purpose platform for everybody to see all the time.
With an explanation of what it means underneath it.
Total explanation every time. Yeah, for each one. For each one. And we've got them posted in our offices, of course. So we've got it in a lot of different places for people to see all the time. They're reviewed and updated every year. We're checking in. It doesn't mean that we change them. Uh-huh. We're just checking in on them, does this align with everybody? Does this align with what the business is doing?
And is how we are operating aligned with those?
That's right.
So not only do the people believe in it, but that we're actually operating within that set of priorities. So, for instance, the values are the values. They are the core values. I'm going to do them no matter what. They are even if, right? That's how I put it.
Yeah.
Even if. You can't get me to change those core values. And mine are really simple.
Yeah.
They're alignment with what I teach, what I believe, and how I try to live. And it's respect, and it's respect for everybody, not just the CEO.
Yeah.
Right. It's trust, which I don't think any relationship can be built without trust being there. It is integrity, which is a piece. There's a piece of that within the trust. You have to have integrity in order to get trust. And the last one is courage, to not be afraid. It's okay to be afraid, but to persevere even if you are afraid, having the courage to move forward.
Well, I love that. And the reason I love that is because I know with certainty it's totally aligned with what you coach and teach, because you utilize that Venn diagram for your circle of trust, right? And all of those values are falling into place, and they intersect at certain places. And so I love that. And that's a perfect example of taking your own personal values, applying them to your business, and then practicing what you preach at that level. So it's awesome. And if you're not doing that, you need to do it. In my opinion, do a check on your values and your brand purpose tomorrow with your team. Go ask your team if they even know any of the values of the business, and see if they understand them, see if they align with them. And if you even get one or two no's or I don't know or anything like that, it's an indicator of hey, maybe we should check in.
We have more work to do.
Yeah.
Right. So I actually have a process that when I do strategic planning retreats with organizations, this portion of it is the first 4 hours.
Of course.
In addition to the pre-work that I've assigned to every participant that they have to do and turn in before, and the values go to. What my process looks like this. When we're talking about values, what I'm asking each of the managers that sit around the room to do is pick somebody in your department that amplifies one of our values, and you come and tell the other 10 of us what that is, right? There's a whole thing about that, right? There's this feeling that, oh, wow, they do that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so cool.
Yeah.
Right. And then the mission is in alignment. Is this what our purpose is? Is this what we're doing and why we're doing it? And the vision is a real simple thing. Is I ask people to, and this is a pre-work assignment. I ask them to paint a picture, like in their mind, paint it with words or paint it, diagram it if you like, but bring that picture into the room, and you're going to share that with the other 10 people in the room. And it is. I ask people to close their eyes and then listen to somebody's vision of what that future looks like.
Yeah.
And then the one question I ask afterward, is that something that make you proud? Would you like to work at a place like that?
Yeah.
All right. And it's so easy to get people in alignment that way. But it's a 4-hour process plus pre-work in order to get to there. When you think, well, it's just checkbox. Here's my values. Yep, same as last year. Here's the mission, same as last year. Here's the vision, same as last year. Only a couple extra zeros at the back end of it.
It can't be just checking a box. It just can't, Scott. You're right.
There's a lot of that.
I think there is. I think let's talk for a second about. I love that process, by the way. I think everybody should follow a process similar to that, if not the one you just mentioned.
Find one that's better.
Find one that works. Yeah. But it is a great process. It's a great way to do a total check-in, complete check-in on everything, brand purpose to your blue sky vision to what your values, vision and values. Let's talk about this. I think in the hiring process, I think it gets missed. I often ask, especially for very key positions, I'll say, hey, did you check in on what our brand purpose is? Did you check in on our values? Or I ask a specific question, what are your values? Can you tell me what your values are? So I don't even necessarily want to share what our values are. I just want to ask somebody what their values are, and then I can know right away whether they align or they don't align. I do think we often get caught up in the skill set or the resume,
We do.
and we lose sight of, is this person a cultural fit for the business?
So let me take what you're doing a step further. You probably do this, but I'm going to explain it a little bit differently. So we had a guy come in and do a presentation to our EO forum one time, and he said, when I hire, so our values are all over the walls, right? But when I hire, I make sure that the applicant's back is to that wall, and I want to see if they've looked us up, right? And then see what that means. So that's one little trick. But the other one that I really like is that when you say, tell me about the things that you value. They give me an item. They say, I value, I don't know, family or dollars or whatever they say, right? Whatever they say. I ask them to tell me a story when they've shown their commitment to that value and what that looked like to them. Getting people to tell stories, right? They all have one. They all have a story, and you can tell if it's just based on the story that they're going to tell. Whether it's they went to your website and they saw En Fuego, so they start talking about how hot things are. Right? So that's a bullshit. That's a bullshit guy trying to get through an interview, as opposed to get him to tell a story on how this relentless pursuit of whatever you're talking about affected your life.
Well, and there's two other values that I didn't mention. One is team. Team is super important to us, and then the other the other one that I think we've talked about, we've dedicated an entire podcast to, is empowering people. And arguably that is the most important value that we have. And I've talked about this in previous podcasts. So I use the platform Lead with Purpose. And I love it as that platform. One of the reasons I love it so much is it has a recognition feature. And when we recognize somebody, we're recognizing them, we're catching them in the act of that value.
Of the value.
Right. So always when we recognize somebody as, I want to recognize this person for empowering this other person to truly shine and do their job. That's just an example. Or I want to recognize this person for being a true team player and helping us when we needed it the most for this example.
I'm going to go a little deeper on that. So we have our once a month meetings with groups like that, and you pull out some of the recognitions and you read them out loud and give them extra recognition. And then they say for empowering their team to do something. Right. I would ask that person to tell the story again. So how did that happen? What worked? What didn't work? What did they do specifically? Right. And let them really shine. The power is in these stories. It's in the stories that people tell.
Well, you can tell we're tracking how many people are giving and receiving those recognitions, and with what values are being called out the most too. So I think you're right. You're totally right when you say like that really enhances the moment to shine for that individual. And I think it is important, and people like to be recognized.
But the rest of the people in the audience that are hearing that story, you're going to be tugging on heartstrings. You're going to be getting into the gut, getting into the pit of their gut and the stories that happen. But just make that so much powerful, and it cements the idea.
Well, that's what it is. So you said it right there at the end, which I think is the critical piece to what I'm talking about, which is cementing the idea, cementing the value. So it does become very easy at that point to cite what the value is, to understand what the value means when you're using it that regularly, and people are getting recognized for it.
Yeah, that's great. So what about, you call it blue sky vision, I just call it vision. Let's talk about that. What's the process that you like to see with as you're going through these exercises with your team? Yeah,
again, I'm such a believer in Mark Kohler's process and Lead with Purpose. And so we recently went through it, right? So we went back and we said, great, how do we want our brand purpose to be worded, and how should that change? We came up with something really simple. So when you think of a brand purpose, it should be very quick, concise, and it should really embody what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And in our case, we came up with enhancing the color of life together. And we manufacture glass, art glass, specifically used in art, tile, there's an app building. So our product is hugely associated with creativity. And when we get feedback from people, it's pretty incredible because we get feedback from people that says their lives were changed because of the pool in their backyard that has our glass in it, or the person that made this incredibly special project with our glass for somebody else that completely changed their lives, or whatever that might be. And so that's how we came up with that. As we said, that is what we do. We are enhancing life, right, as a result of the product that we make. And so we collaborated. So I think what was really important, because I don't believe that you're going to get total buy-in if me as a leader, right, in the company, I get together, let's say with my business partner, and we decide this is the brand purpose, and we just tell everybody that's what the brand purpose is. You're not going to get the same buy-in. It's just not going to have the same impact or the same effect. So our entire leadership team at several different levels collaborated on coming up with that. Then we had probably from the process, we had maybe 4 versions of it that came out, and that went out on a survey. And we manufacture in Mexico. So what was important for us was that brand purpose was able to translate well in Spanish. And so that was incredibly important to us too. So we put a survey out to our entire team in Mexico, our entire US team, and they voted on the one that touched them the most. And so we had a clear winner, and that's what we went with.
It's a huge difference between getting compliance, top down, the boss makes a decision, people will comply because you control their paycheck, right? And commitment by letting them be part of the process. And in fact, drive the process in this case, right? Drove that process in order to you have commitment to the idea now. And it's because it was their idea.
I loved the process. I really appreciated it. I think since we've started using the Lead with Purpose platform, that is the best we've ever done, especially in terms of collaboration. I enjoyed the process, and there were some emerging leaders that took the lead role in pushing for that to happen. I enjoyed that part the most because I really appreciate it when people step up and get really passionate around something. And we got a great result in the end. And the best part is that we exposed that brand purpose to the entire company along the way, right? And so everybody had an opportunity, and still continues to have an opportunity to connect with that brand purpose. Now, the blue sky vision is more of really that 3 to 5 year type vision, right? I like 3 years. Mark Kohler and his process, he's definitely talking about 3 to 5 years. I think, when you think of the terms BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, or HOTS, huge, outrageous target, we've got a lot of people that use different processes and different terms for that. But when I think of the blue sky vision, I think 3 years is a great target. This is what we want to be in the next 3 years. We know this is what we have to do in the next 3 years in order to achieve that. 5 years is okay. If you go out beyond that, I think it's really, really hard to reverse engineer what that looks like.
A little bit different, and it is based on the organization I'm working with, right? So it's not my company that we're doing this with, although we do it ourselves too. Yeah. But we're much smaller in scope. Yeah. So, but that either 3 or 5 years depends on the CEO and the leadership team on what they're looking for, and then we drive to that. So. If they say in fact, I got a company that had a 5-year plan. You know why? CEO was retiring in 5 years, so that's where his plan ended. I don't recommend that.
I've seen that.
I recommend 5 years past your retirement is the time that we're looking for. Yeah. Because I don't want to just ride off into the sunset. I want you to create a legacy, something that you can be proud of, and not be jealous of the next CEO who did something, right? But they're following this vision that you might have had, and they'll change it. They'll change it to whatever they need to, but there's an alignment in there because the company can't just make 90-degree changes. It just doesn't happen, right? So I counseled this guy to say, listen, you're going to be retiring in 5 years, but what are we doing after that? what would you like to see as your legacy here?
Yeah.
And it got him thinking differently. So that was really helpful.
I love that. And you're right. It does vary from, one business to the next. I mean, we came up, we came up with something. We literally just finished this, by the way. Okay. And so our blue sky vision we came up with we inspire lifestyles and are dedicated to enriching 15 million lives with glass by 2026, 1 square foot at a time. So what we wanted to do is we want to connect that we manufacture a good that has the capability of changing lives. And we wanted to be able to say that we impact those lives, and we wanted it to be measurable so that we could track how we're doing that. An example, one of my favorite was, I think, John F. Kennedy. I forget the exact date, but John F. Kennedy said, we're going to get to the moon by 1961 right. or whatever that was. He gave a 10-year outlook on we're going to get to the moon, and that's the date we're going to get it. And so that's your measuring stick.
Which is beyond his tenure, beyond when he was going to be the president.
That's right.
The outcome was going to happen, right? Somewhere within that. And he still set that because he's leaving that legacy. Yeah.
So I'll give you another example. You may or may not know this. I'm curious if you do. Do you know what the largest fast food restaurant in the world is? By sheer number of locations?
I think it's Subway.
It's Subway, 100%. Yeah. And it was...
Not by volume, not by dollar volume, but by number of locations.
By sheer number of locations. Yeah. And it's interesting, though, because the founder, CEO at the time, I can't remember how many years ago this was, but he started with, I'm going to have 300 locations by such and such a date. Then it became 3,000 locations by such and such a date. Then obviously that brand purpose or that blue sky vision has changed over time, which it should. It should be an iterative process.
It needs to grow.
But, to me, that type of blue sky vision is so clear. That's my preference, is to have something that's very clear and measurable as a vision.
I just had an interesting group that I worked with as an organization, and I wanted to do, instead of 4 hours with the leadership team, I broke it up into different groups. We did 2 hours with donors and volunteers. We did 2 hours with leadership. We did 2 hours with staff members, and we did 2 hours with board members.
Yeah.
Board members love putting metrics down. They love the metrics. The leadership team that was going to be held to metrics did not want metrics. Right.
No surprise.
So it's like and they were the last group to go too. So I thought, this is going to be great. We've got everyone there. The donors were in alignment. The board was in alignment.
Yeah.
The staff thought it was a great idea. And the staff even said, do you think we can do that? I said, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Right. Get to the leadership team. And they said, oh, those numbers, what they were saying is, I don't want to be held responsible for that.
Yeah.
Management.
Yeah.
So
I get it.
It cracked me up.
I get it,
but I understood it.
It's such a great, to me, there's just a high level of accountability. When, to me, it's like when you do state a vision or a blue sky vision that is very clear and measurable like that, you're essentially putting a stake in the ground, and you're saying, this is what I'm going to achieve.
Resolutions are like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to weigh this much, or I'm going to exercise this often, or I'm not going to eat this anymore. I mean,
well,
put numbers on.
The problem is what are most New Year's resolutions? It's a great analogy, by the way. I want to eat better.
Yeah.
I want to lose weight.
Right.
Or
be specific and measure. So smart goals.
Right? Coaching for our coaching businesses. I want to become a thought leader, right? That's not a vision. That is not a vision. That's not a clear and measurable vision. So if you want to eat better, then you're going to specifically state, I'm going to give up eating this, and I'm going to eat this instead. Or, losing weight, I'm going to lose X number of pounds by Y date.
It is strategic, but there's got to be some tactical things.
There has to be
play in order to make it real.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be healthier this year.
Measurable and achievable.
Yeah. Same with an organization, right? What are we going to do? And so here's the other portion of the process that I insist on with my clients, is that we have our values. We start with that. That's a foundational piece. The values are the foundational piece. we have a vision out there, and we have this purpose or mission, whatever you want to call it. So they're the same. They're the same things, and they all need to be in alignment with each other. They can't have one here and one way over there, and then just one way over there. Is what we're doing, our mission, in alignment with our vision? If not, we're not there. Let's keep talking.
Well, and do the values fit into that? And
can we do it living our values?
Yeah. Because
it's easy to hit numbers. You can lie and cheat and steal. Short term, it's easy to hit numbers. Lie and steal and steal. But most people don't have those as their values.
Yeah, right? to that point, to that end, all of those things have to align. You know, otherwise you're just you're disconnected from the end game of the business.
So what's the benefit? Let's talk about benefits of this. So we already talked a little bit about hiring. So you're going to have a happier workforce. You're going to have less turnover. So that's a measurable benefit. But it's really difficult to measure some of this stuff, right? This happiness quotient. This let's make this a great workplace. But that's one that I have found that we can do. We can say we can lower your turnover rate. We can turn over only the people you want turned over, because we're not going to hire people that don't fit our culture in the first place. And then if we can't train them, then it's time to move on.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, the tenure of your employees is gonna radically grow up.
But with the younger generations now, they are not thinking of lifetime careers with a single organization. They're just not. And I think they could. If we, the organizations, create the environment that allows them to fill their own purpose, which is in alignment with the company's purpose, that pays them fairly. And pay is not the reason people leave. I mean, if somebody has a 30% pay raise, they'll leave, even if they're happy with their place. But below that, it's not pay that gets them to leave. It is a misalignment. It is poor management. There's something else in there. They're not happy. And my guess is that they're not happy with their job. You're not happy with them either. It's a two-way street, right? So we can lower turnover. We can make it a happier place. But does that actually turn into a better business?
It does. And I'm going to tell you how. I'm going to tell you how. So I think you hit it spot on. Retention is really important, right? So we're going to lower that turnover, no question. And then culture, if you build that culture where they're happy. So if you're measuring happiness, so we check in on that. And when we have our monthlies and especially our quarterlies, we're ranking from 1 to 10. How happy are you in your current role in this business?
Great.
Right? And so
how many companies do that?
Yeah. I mean, you got to check in on that every once in a while.
Question.
Yeah. It's an easy question. And then, we everybody ranks it. Everybody goes around the table to rank and we go over what the rankings are, and the question then becomes, let's just say it's a 7. What's it going to take to be an 8?
What would it take?
What's it going to take to be a 9? Those types of things. So I think, measuring that happiness is really important. And I do think it will, having values, having clear vision, having clear direction, that creates that. There's no question. But here's what I'm going to tell you, because it's really simple. Connectivity equals productivity. And what I mean by that is the more connected your employees are to your business and its purpose and the values, the more productive those employees are going to be. It's just, and I'm not, you can go statistically and it's out there, do your own research, but I can tell you that time and time again, I wish I could tell you I'm the one that made that up.
Yeah.
but you can read business book after business book and they'll tell you the same thing, that the more connected your team is with your business, especially your values and your purpose, the more productive they're going to be.
So I just read an article, and I can't tell you the company. It's a 40-person company. They're not not a household name at all. But they decided that their management decided to go to a 4-day work week. Thought that would make people happier. It is what they called the work-life balance, and we don't believe in that term.
Yeah.
However, that's what their
I get it.
Their approach was.
I know why people use it.
4 days on, 3 days off, right?
Okay.
People would like their families and all. Do you know that the employees came in on the weekend? And the boss didn't even know they were there. They didn't say, hey, we're going to come in and get some overtime. They came in because they were so pleased with leadership's ability to create a better life for them that they were willing to give up something on their own to do that. So I think you're right. I think the happiness leads to better productivity.
Well, okay, so I'm associated with an organization right now that has unlimited PTO. So think about that.
Doesn't get used.
Unlimited PTO, unlimited.
Yeah.
And no one takes any time off.
They don't abuse it. they don't abuse. My son works for Rivian, the truck manufacturer.
Yeah.
And they have unlimited PTO. And I said, how's that working for you? I don't work any less than I used to. What was his answer? He says, it's like, it's there and I could do it. And I probably wouldn't get any slack for taking more time off, but I don't. Having it available is the perk.
Yeah.
People feel good about that.
Yeah.
And they don't abuse it.
Yeah. It's really incredible when you think about it. It's those little things like the 4-day work week, those type of things go a really long way to build culture. And all of those are built into the values of the business and ultimately the purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing in the first place? So yeah, those are incredible examples. I think ultimately that drives just right back to the type of culture that you want to create. I mean, this isn't, again, I wish Scott and I could take credit for making this stuff up, but reality is these are proven best practices that work time and time again and have the exact results that we're talking about.
And adjusting to the market conditions.
Yeah.
This is, we'll go back to the younger generations, the millennials and the Zs, that they're not going to work the way we work. They're just not going to do that.
Yeah. In
fact, we, older generations, raised them to not put up with our shit, right? Mm-hmm. Which is dad burning himself out, working 60 hours a week and never home and all the stuff that comes with that. These kids learn from that and they're not going to do it. They're not going to challenge their lifestyle for their living. And we're going to need to adjust to that. We, the older folks, are going to need to adjust to that because this is our workforce. That's not just our workforce. It's our customer base. It's not just our customer base. It's our futures.
Well,
kids are our futures.
And I tell you, I quote this book often as Seth Godin, Tribes, right? And when you really start to understand that's what people are seeking. I mean, we're, as human beings, it's just innate. We want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to be a part of a tribe. And a business is no different. An organization is no different. And when people buy into what you're doing and they have a piece of that, then you're just talking about a whole other level of business.
Yeah, I read something the other day, and there's a lot of people that believe this, and I thought, I guess that's a little bit too harsh, that says, hey, don't call this a family. It's not a family. You got your own family. This is a business, and we're going to act like a business. And I'm saying, I like the word tribe. That fits a little bit better than family. Yeah. You're right. I'm not your family, but I should care about your family. I should ask about your family. I should find out about your family because I want to feel that you use the word connectedness. And we get connected with human beings, not with job titles.
That's what it is.
Positions.
That's what it is.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, we're at that time.
We are.
I know. I feel like it's such a good topic of conversation and such a good discussion. And I think if you've made it this far listening to the podcast, thank you. First and foremost. But second, if you want to take away a few things is, one, tomorrow, if you haven't done so already, you need to review your brand purpose, your blue sky vision or your vision, whatever you call it, and your values, most importantly. Get your team involved, collaborate.
All the people all the way down through the level and ask them for stories about the culture that you're trying, whether it's the vision, the mission, or the purpose, or the values. Get your people talking about those things.
Get it visible. Yeah. Once you've done it, is get it visible. Make sure it aligns with your own personal values. Make sure that aligns with the people that are working for you and their values. I think all of this is critically important, and it's not difficult to do a check-in. So do a check-in tomorrow. If you walk away with anything from this podcast, do that check-in tomorrow. And listen, we know that a lot of our listeners are in different leadership roles. So some of you are in management positions working for other companies. So go ask the question, right? Don't wait for the owner of the business. Don't wait for the CEO to come back.
I like that.
Go ask the question, hey, I think it's probably a good idea for us to do a check-in on our brand purpose and our values, whatever that might be. But, be the champion for your company and make that happen.
So let me help with that a little bit, because a lot of people would say to you, yeah, right. My boss is going to look at me like I'm crazy if I go and ask him that question. So how do I mean, speaking truth to power is really what we're talking about doing, right?
Yep.
And my suggestion to that is you talk about him. You talk about it, and he gives you that crazy look, and you ask him, so what's the cost if we don't check in? And then just shut up and let him answer that question.
Yeah, it's a great question.
If we don't check in?
Mm-hmm.
If we don't care about Vince or Susan or Jill or Paul, what's the cost?
Or, hey, I was talking to Scott the other day, and I asked him if he knew what our values were. And I was surprised to hear that he didn't. Then it gave me cause to go talk to Joe, and I got the same answer. Joe didn't know what our values were. So it got me thinking. So
my question is, how can we go about getting Joe and Scott and the rest of them to at least understand where we are and who we are?
Exactly. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for listening as always. And we appreciate all of our listeners that have stuck with us through 5 seasons. And so more to come.
Hope your 2024 is going great. And if you need any help, give us a call.
Yeah. Until next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. Please visit us at theceopodcast.net, where you can learn more about our co-hosts and listen to past episodes. If you would like to have a discussion and dive deeper into any topic, there is also an option to contact Scott or Vince to schedule some time with them. Thanks for listening.